on the last episode of Aperture.
It can also be very dangerous to not have a co-gender relationship. People start to question your motives and intentions, right? So it's very, very almost influenced. You're very much encouraged to have co-gender relationships.
So all of the solution of these issues is the timely marriage of our youth, because they're exposed to all of this horrendous phenomena. And in order to safeguard themselves, the perfect solution is a timely marriage.
What happens between a man and a woman? There is this attraction. It's always going to be there. Why deny it and make certain goals that you know you're not going to be able to achieve?
Somebody tweeted like, how much money you guys are getting. So
we're getting paid per show. It depends how many sponsors we get. Actually.
We had the Coca-Cola board.
Oh, we had it somewhere. Oh, yeah. We can't say that.
I think another tweet that.
It is important that you first reform yourselves. If you become righteous and virtuous, then have faith that Allah will treat your progeny in good manner.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the show. If you're joining us for the first time, the show is called Aperture. If you have become a regular follower, welcome to episode number 5. It is actually part 2 of a previous episode, which is relationship and marriage. This being the part 2, for anybody that's joining us for the first time, I want to let you know that the show is interactive and engaging, powered by our followers on social media, our followers that may be emailing us, or the various phone calls and text messages that we've been receiving. If you do wish to engage with us directly, you can follow us at Aperture_show. You can send us your tweets, you can send us your feedback, comments, or any question that you may have pertaining to the topic. If you are somebody, again, joining us for the first time and weren't with us last episode, the part 1 of this series, we looked at, as I had mentioned earlier, relationship and marriages, looking at living in this Western culture. As you go out into the society, the expectation that you have of mingling with the opposite gender, the effects of that, right from whether you're in high school, university, in a workspace, chances are you're probably working with the opposite gender, and the type of effects that has, or the influences of that developing into a relationship, some of the effects of premarital relationships, and we looked at some negative elements, both things that can physically harm you and emotionally, and the type of impact that it can have on you. On today's episode, we will be looking at some of the ways that Islam and jamaat has encouraged members to pursue a potential partner, and additionally to be able to have some sort of a guide and an opportunity to be able to ask their questions, as it is a topic which at times is not readily discussed. With me to my immediate left is Shahid Mansoor Saab, who is National Secretary Tarbiyat. To my right, we have Farhan Iqbal Saab, who's a missionary right here in York region, which is one of the largest regions in Canada. To his immediate right, we have Sufyan Ahmed Saab, who got married at a very young age, who will be speaking a little bit to his experience. To his immediate right, we have Shams Saab, who is Sadr, Shamal Rashid Sahib, who is Sadr Majlis Saskatoon North. Jazakallah for being with us. So we are really well represented from various different aspects, and we're really excited to have some new faces to the show to be able to get different insights, and maybe you guys would shed on some of your experience. So at this time, Shahid Mansoor Saab, I would like to come to you to start part 2 of relationship and marriages.
First of all, how I want to start this show with a very strong message, which I'm conveying in our programs in the local jamaats all over Canada, that our youth, as we have discussed in the last episode, and Safwan Sahib was already mentioned, that is exposed to such an environment where it's very hard to control and safeguard the chastity, which is the most important aspect, whether it's religiously or whether it's a personality development, to me and to everyone. So most of the time when we talk, when we have the discussions in the Jamaat meetings or elsewhere, it is always an ownership placed on the youth. The fingers are always pointed towards youth, that how they are behaving, what are they doing, where they are going, what are the impacts, how they are bringing up, how their tarbiyat is going. But to my point is that we must be, and I must be, very thankful to them that despite of this phenomena in the society in which they are being brought up, they're still coming to our mosques, they're still offering the prayers, they're still coming to Jamaat meetings, they're still doing such a noble work. It's a huge jihad to which our generation and the ones who are immigrants have never exposed to. So we must be very thankful to them, and we must be very thankful to Allah Ta'ala that how they are protecting themselves despite of these challenges in this environment by the sheer grace of Allah Ta'ala, by the guidance of Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis, alhamdulillah. So with this, yes, they are protecting themselves, but what we are doing as Jamaat and as the parents in order to accommodate their needs, which are natural, which are human needs, which no one can deny. All the pressure, all the expectations on them, but what is our part to accommodate their needs by the lawful manner and by the way where we can help them out. At least we can help them out in this regard, which is the solution which I proposed in the last episode, is a timely marriage. So with this, I want to request Murabi Sahib that what is the Islamic stance of the marriage?
Actually, as you have already mentioned, in essence, Islam promotes timely marriage. You have mentioned that living in this society, we have so many dangers that we face, and the Quran, interestingly, when it talks about marriage and when it refers to those people who are married, it uses the word mosinina ghaira mushafihin. Mosinin is plural of mosin. Mosin is a person who is inside a fort, right? So a married person is a mosin, as in he is inside a fort that protects that person from the dangers of being a bachelor, of living alone, and something that protects his chasteness and his morality, and something that helps him, in fact, not just protects, but also helps him boost his spirituality, his morality, and build a better relationship with Allah, right? So this is interesting how the Quran mentions this. And there are a number of other reasons in the Holy Quran for marrying. For instance, another reason for marriage in the Holy Quran is procreation, right? Marriage is something that leads to procreation. Another reason is to find a life partner with whom you find comfort, with whom you find peace of mind. And these are not my words, these are words of the Holy Quran, right? Peace of mind is there, finding comfort is there. Also, to have relationships, not just the husband and wife, but their families get together and they support each other psychologically, socially, in a number of ways.
Very interesting, and that's so true. Interestingly, I was just talking to my father-in-law and mother-in-law yesterday. I didn't have the job from the last 7-8 months, so of course they were praying for me, and then by the grace of Allah I got something last week. And like I was talking to them, my mother is also living with me and they are also living in Canada. So that's such a beautiful system which we have, the prayers and also the support for each other. And of course, Jamaat is, mashallah, alhamdulillah, is an extended family which nobody else have. So that's
right. The family unit is important in Islam, where
right.
You get the support from your family.
Right.
And so coming back to the point, Islam is all about timely marriage. The earlier you get married, you're able to benefit from all the advantages of getting married in a timely fashion.
Interestingly. Right. So with this, I want to ask Sadr Sahib, when just with a brief introduction, you are professionally, what you're doing, you're working as an engineer?
I did my electrical engineering here from Waterloo. In terms of my married life, I got engaged at the age of 19. And then got married at the age of 24.
And how old was your wife?
At the time when we got married, she was 19.
And when you got engaged?
We got engaged, she was 14.
14 years of age.
Yes.
and you brought up here in Canada for most of your younger life, right?
Yes, I did my high school here and then university.
It's a very interesting example. We'll go forward and just for the
Right, to his
Yeah,
immediate right,
right.
we have Sufyan bhai. So if you don't mind sharing both with us and some of our viewers a little bit about your experience.
I know this much. Sadhguru Sahib beat me to the race at 19. I was a little back. I was 22, so I just completed my university studies of 4 years, and I would say it wasn't planned, but 2 months after, things just worked out, and I was in Pakistan. And when I was in Pakistan, I saw her, and we'll talk more about that later. And at 23, I got married.
23 you got married, right?
23. And now she's here with me, and recently we just had a son.
MashaAllah. Barakallahu lakum. And Sir, how many kids you have?
I've got, alhamdulillah, 4 kids, 13, 11, 7, and 3 months old.
MashaAllah.
I'm sure you have to make sure you don't get that wrong, right? Yes. You gotta go home and explain to the wife if you got it.
Yes.
So Sir, what do you think? What do you think? Is it a good decision? Was it a good decision to get engaged so early? And what are the circumstances? How you coped with it?
Yeah, I mean, it was, for me, I would say, yes, I had, it was a good thing. When I started university at the age of 19, that's when I got engaged. So, in my mind, I was able to concentrate more on my education and not getting into, these other things. By the time I graduated, the year I graduated is the year when I got married. So that way, it was a much, I would say, by talking with our friends, it was a much peaceful, I would say, or, you don't have that peer pressure or that you normally have in this society.
Right. So, and Sufyan, sir?
Yeah, so he brings in, Sadhguru brings a point here, interesting point, that he got engaged before going to university, whereas I got engaged after completing my university. So there's a different dynamics here. And during those 4 years, and even high school, I remember being 15, 16. I don't think I was thinking of marriage, but I know for a fact that I was, in my mind, I was planning things how I can avoid straightforward, go straight without being deviated, or and so that when that moment comes, I have done my best, and the expectation that I have from my partner, that I have done my part as well. So there's a lot of hypocrisy sometimes in our side,
Right.
at least the male side. So around 16, 17, that's what I'm trying to say. Around 16, 17, I started beginning to think about hypocrisy, that it's only a few years away, and I wanted to avoid that. But in terms of benefits, or whether it was a good decision, good decision or bad decision, I just thought it was a natural step. After university, it was the next step. I don't know if my parents were putting this in my ears all these years and I didn't know, or it was my own decision, but it just felt like the natural step. I finished my university. I didn't have a job, but
You didn't have the job.
I didn't have a job. But this is where the dynamics of what your family structure is, financial support there is, and if you don't have that, then obviously things change. But based on that, I felt like that was just a natural step.
But financial stability, he's talked about, like, you can shed some light based on your experience, like what the youth is, especially.
Well, I think that it's quite familiar, as I'm sure a lot of you guys hear this all the time, right? There's a general sense that when I get my job, when I mentally feel that I can support having a family, right? When I have the right income and potentially the right framework to support a family before going into that type of commitment. So I'm sure you come across that all the time. What's your typical response to some of those people?
Well, if I look at my situation right now, I cannot afford a family.
Right.
So if we think about
right time.
these financial situations, it's you never have you always have this greed that you're not ready. There's this thing that you need to have before you get married. You first have a job, then you say, I need to have a car before I get married. Then I need to have a house before I get married. It would never end. So if I put myself back and look at my financial state at this stage, and if I'm thinking that way, I would say I'm not ready.
And that's the same thing which I used to talk to my mother also, like, and that's what happens in Jamaat, especially in Eastern culture also. There's a huge demand from the girl side also that how the boy is doing. And when I was going to get married and there was something going on, the process was going on, I was asking this question to my mother, like, are they going to get married with me? Are they going to look at me? Or are they going to look at my house or car or something like this is a natural question. Like, what are you looking at? What are the real needs? What are the real circumstances? What are the yes, we do need to confirm, but to which extent? So there is a hadith also, I think. So
yes, there is a hadith. It's narrated by Hazrat Anas radiyallahu anhu that some of the companions of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that they will not marry at all, right? And if you look at the statistics nowadays, a lot of people are preferring to live alone. Even on CBC, either yesterday or the day before yesterday, they were saying that there's a higher percentage of people nowadays who are just living alone, right? And they're not choosing to get married. And this happened at his time as well. Some of them said that, and they said that we will pray constantly and we will not sleep and we will just fast continuously. And when this news reached the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he said, "What kind of people say such things?" So he was very emotional about it. He was to some extent upset that these people are ignoring these things. And he went and told them. He said, I am a human being. I also offer prayers. I sleep sometimes. I sometimes pray at night. I also got married. So you should also get married. And so this is an example from the life of the companions and the Holy Prophet ﷺ himself, how much importance he gave to marriage and timely marriage.
So what are the benefits, other benefits? You talked about how old is your children? 13?
13, 11. Yeah. The youngest one is 3.5.
What are the advantages from that perspective?
I mean, I feel, I feel much younger in terms of, I'm almost 40. I've got
40.
Yes, almost.
So you're shy of saying that you're in Ansarullah?
Still one more year.
He's in denial.
Yes. He's in denial mode, right?
So, and I've got a daughter who is 13 years old, and I've got a son who is 3 months old. And having that experience, if most of you who are parents would know what that feeling is, having to hold your child, and getting early marriage at the right time, it gives you that advantage that you can experience that for a longer period.
So less generation gap, in other words.
Less generation gap. You're much closer with your kids. They understand you, right. Rather than just having a relationship.
Friendly relationship.
Yeah, a very friendly relationship. You play with them. You're more active. So there's a lot of benefits in that sense.
So Fianza, is that true with your father also? Like I think you, mashallah, all of you have the very friendly or open relationship with your father also, who is the principal of our Jamia Ahmadiyya Canada.
That's true.
So is that generation gap helps? Like less generation gap, less difference of the age between the father and the son or the daughter, mother and the daughter?
Absolutely, that helps because they can relate to it. And if there is a generation gap, it's still possible. I mean, there's a gap between my father, right? Of course, he didn't marry young, but it's just harder. There's greater challenges to it, and that's where I was lucky. My older brother took charge in terms of what's going in high school. We'd be ready for this. Be ready for university. This will come. So he was very helpful in that matter. But you asked the challenges, right? The question.
What are the benefits? Maybe some other benefits of getting timely marriage?
I think if you get married early in a timely fashion, you tend to stay younger for a longer period of time because you're able to, and there's less of a generation gap, like it's already mentioned.
You have the energy to raise your children and doing your work and house things and all those responsibilities.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. You have the energy for a long time to take proper care of your children. It's good for the tarbiyat, for the moral training of your children as well. And let me just share.
We're all doing tabligh to Safwan Sahib, who's the only one who's bachelor sitting over here.
So yeah, that's why I'm looking at him a lot. There's an example in front of me from the time of Hazrat Masih Maud as well. And Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi Rahimahullah Ta'ala quoted this as well in one of his sermons. And we have discussed this in so many ijlasat, where he mentioned the example during the time of the Masima Sam of a young girl. Her age was 22. And her parents were non-Ahmadi and they wanted her to get married to a non-Ahmadi, but she was out of agitation. She got married to an Ahmadi at the age of 22. And at that age, it's in those days it seemed like she had gotten really, really old to have gotten married out of agitation without the permission of her parents to an Ahmadi. Right? And as Masima Sam was asked about it, and he said, this nikah is fine, it's okay, because she was in those conditions. So, her age...
But Jamaat then becomes the wali of that.
Exactly,
right.
exactly.
Jamaat doesn't take care of that need.
Yes, the Jamaat becomes the wali for her. And, I'm just mentioning that in his time, it was inconceivable. And now we are having so many women in this society. They're 30, they're 32, they're 35, and they're still not married.
That's one thing which, very interestingly, when I had these discussions with the parents, one of the parents came to me after the Ajlas, and he said, like, our children, they say, we have the peer pressure because our co-workers, our fellow non-Ahmadis, they are getting married late in their life. Mm-hmm. But my response to that parent was, like, we are not comparing apples to apples. We are comparing apples to oranges. The problem, the point is, because those who are getting married late, most of them, they have already gone through that relationships. Although they are not married, but they have already gone through those experiences. So what we are comparing with, so this is another dilemma which we are facing, and but
right. And there's two sides to that too, right? Especially, I think we do tend to, whether we like it or not, take a lot of influence from our culture, our workplace, people that we spend a significant portion of our daily time with, especially if you work or go to university. Getting married is one side of it, but when you tell them that it's going to be an arranged marriage, your parents are going to be part of that process. Sometimes you get raised eyebrows. Like, I remember bringing it up to a coworker, and he even asked me, like, "Come on, like you're educated, you're from I don't get it. Like, you seem like Canadian, like you went to school here. How could you possibly even think that arranged marriage is even okay, and you're saying that that's how you're going to get married?" And obviously both of you guys got married at a fairly young age. What was some of the reactions that you got from your peers?
Yeah, obviously I did, in university, people are not even engaged or, and seeing me getting engaged, they were surprised, and, they said, oh, how long have you guys been dating or seeing each other? And it's a new thing for them. Mm-hmm. But in terms of as I've mentioned, there's a lot of advantages that it's as if you've got a legal girlfriend.
Yes. Right.
So you with the consent of your parents and I don't see anything wrong in that.
That's so beautiful and noble, right?
Yes.
So
it doesn't have that.
Nice.
Yes.
So,
I think other than all these social things and psychological things and societal things, another thing that is an advantage of timely marriage is also scientific, right? Women who get married at a timely fashion, it's healthier for them,
right. And another one, yeah.
He provided a nice biological aspect. There's also a psychological here, and
Mm-hmm.
the core to me was, and we talked about this. We've gone visited many sites, and we talked about this: the ability to, and if you marry early, ability to be flexible.
Right.
As you get older, you really get very rigid with your personality, and profession comes in, and all sorts of other issues. So being flexible, and obviously, let's face it, when she comes in, there's a lot of things you're learning about her, and you're learning about yourself, and how you're going to change, and how she's going to amend. And that's where the flexibility makes it really easy to adapt to the others.
Interesting, and that's very important because that is what we are seeing being a Secretary Tarbiyat, that one of the reason of separations and divorces, and that's one of the question came also through Twitter as well. One of the reason of getting divorces is because they are getting married late in their life and they are set in their lifestyles, and sometimes it's very lame excuses based on which they are getting divorces, and they don't want to change their habits, lifestyles for each other, and they're also very much independent of financial things and everything. So they say, like, why we need,
Yeah. And there was an example you mentioned last time,
right,
of Masima Sam.
Yes.
Yeah, please share.
Yes, the Masima Sam, when
he got married, Hazrat Ramadan.
Right.
She came to the house from a very well-off family to a house where there was only one cot, and she survived. Like, look at that's another thing where sometimes we go into cycles of finding the perfect balance and match, as we've talked about before. Look at the example. He married to a 40-year-old lady. He married to a young girl also. He married to orphan. He married to. That's why the examples which he gave to us, that we need to get out of this mental block. That is only the right way, because look at us, how much is a big checklist nowadays. We're going through those checklists, but what is happening? We are going through that exercise so much that end up sometimes getting divorces also, going through all of that.
Even
process.
before the time of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you go to the mother of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, Hazrat Maryam alayhi salam. They have recorded her age at the time of marriage. She was 14 years old. And similarly, the daughter, and coming back to the present age, the daughters of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam, 14, 15, they got married really early.
Right, and that's and that's how it is. Another advantage, there's another very fundamental advantage of timely marriage is our boys and girls. They're going to the universities, they're going to the workplaces where they're spending active part of their time at the workplaces, active part of their life, 9 to 10 hours a day. And there's a natural tendency of getting attracted towards the opposite gender. And that is also happening in Jamaat nowadays. It's increasing, the trend is increasing to getting married outside of Jamaat. So with the timely marriage, you can, that's another thing which we can address. So there is so many advantages. There's so many advantages, less generation gap, health, most importantly is the chastity, become focused, then chance of successful marriage, and then also not going outside of the Jamaat. There's so many advantages. We can keep on going. Sufyan, want to add something?
I want to personally, what I felt was that we grew together. She's 21, and I'm 22, 23. We're not mature to the level we should be. We're just out of university. So we make mistakes together. We amend those mistakes. We learn from those mistakes. We grow together. And the first 6 months was not easy. In any marriage, it's not easy.
No.
And so we had a learning curve, you can say 6 months, and I would say more of a year. But after that, it's when it becomes very strong. It's friendship strong. And that's the difference. I think we had those rough patches in 6 months, like every marriage, right? You're learning about each other. But this 1 year mark is when you see how strong it's gone.
Right.
And I think it's because that being married at a young age, we're very flexible, like we've mentioned over and over.
Leads to a successful marriage.
Absolutely.
Right.
And those as younger you are, those 6 months rough period, if you're older, that could be prolonged.
Right.
Because your habits are set and all that.
You're kind of stubborn.
Yes. Right? And I mean yourself as well. And when I graduate, I got a job 4 months before I got married, and financially, you're not up to that par. And when you get married at that age, you basically have someone to support you, and you actually make your house together. You build your house, you make your home together, and that's a very important thing. That in terms of your relationship, it helps build that. It would be different that if I have a house and then bring my wife there, it's something that I have put my love in it.
You have higher expectations.
Then
right?
you basically put your love together,
Right.
and building that, work for that common goal.
Right. Very interesting.
Right. So I think as we're talking about timely marriage, I think it's important that for a lot of our viewers that are maybe in that age or getting closer to that age, what are some of the steps, right? What are and that's going to be the next component that we're going to look at, is what are some of the steps, right? What is, if there's any programs within Jamaat of going about pursuing this. We will take a quick break, and when we come back from the break, for all of our viewers, we are now going to look at as you're in that age, approaching your time to get married, what are some of the steps that are in place and that can be implemented to make that process easier for you. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Let's get into this right away. Is it time, Danielle, to acknowledge the end of traditional marriage and embrace some new ideas about romance and family?
Well, I think we are already embracing as a society and culture new ideas about family and marriage. But no, I think one of the important things to remember about marriage as an institution, and this I noticed came at the sort of very end of your discussion with Kate, is it's really about children. That people who are, it's fine to say, well, we can just live together, or we don't need a piece of paper or whatever, but where marriage really matters and continues to matter today is when you create a family. And we know now that, and it's still true, that children who are raised with two parents just tend to do dramatically better in life than those who are, raised by single parents.
Danielle, how about you? Your parental experience at home, did that have an influence on your view?
I just realized aside from you, Steve, I'm the only one married here. I've been married for 23 years. I came from
happily though?
Very happily. I don't even want to, yes. And this is what this is the point I want to address. Although my husband came from parents who did not divorce, very similar to your background, mine had. So we came from two different backgrounds. But two things. One, and I thought this was a fascinating theme through Kate's article, was watching young women don't understand the sexual power they have at 22. And that what Kate describes, the regularity of men coming through her life, I wrote about in my book, that I described it like subway trains, that when you're 20, 25, 26, there's always a train coming, the doors open, all these men tumble out of it, and then suddenly you're 30 and it's like, it's getting later at the station, and then the trains start coming through, and if they're not empty, the guy who comes out is like a crazy homeless person. So I think that one of the things we underestimate.
God, if the first answer wasn't politically incorrect, that one sure was. Okay, but anyway, keep going, Danielle.
It's true. And I think Kate has illustrated this in her own descriptions of that sense that she said quite directly, that waning sense of sexual power that is true whether it's politically incorrect or not. It happens to all of us. And so one of the things I would say to somebody who's 22 is you're not that young either. Like 22, as you pointed out, was when your parents got married.
Yep.
I got married at 25. And one of the other points I'd just like to make in defense of marriage, we always talk about it like it's some prison, or that it's something like, God forbid you should go into it before you know exactly who you are or developed, or in fact, by getting married younger, I found, in my case, that you are much more open to being with another person. And as we all know, married or not, as we get older, we get much more rigid in our habits.
Set in our ways.
Set in our ways, Henry Higgins-like. And being young with someone and being able to adapt to that other person and learning about intimacy, I think that's what we're not communicating to our children, that this whole idea that you have to be this perfectly formed human being before you can walk into a relationship with another person, I think is the wrong message. I think we should be beginning, how do you become intimate? How do you become dependent with another person that is not so threatening?
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed that clip. It's a clip that was on a major network here, especially in Toronto. It's called TVO, which was, it was really interesting to see that even within the Western culture, they are now starting to echo the same sentiment that both is quite prevalent in Islam, and something that Jamaat has been really promoting, that even some of the Western scholars and academics are starting to come out with similar ideas that yes, marriage is the way to go. Shahid Mansoor Sahib, I want to come over to you because I know that we, based on the request of some of our Twitter followers and some of the feedback that we got, we've actually arranged a Lajna representative to provide some female insight to this topic that we're discussing. I'm going to request Shahid Mansoor Sahib to introduce the speaker, and then we'll bring her on.
Right. Alhamdulillah, we have the representation from Lajna Malla, Canada. Dr. Munazza Khan Sahiba, she is the National Secretary Tarbiyat of Lajna Malla, Canada, and as well as by profession she is a doctor. So from both point of views, very interestingly from the Jamaat and as well as from the medical point of view, she can elaborate some of the perspective from the Lajna side. So Dr. Sabah, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullah.
Dr. Sabah, especially by looking at the TVO clip also and the discussion which we had, what do you think, what is the perspective from a girl's side for the timely marriage?
First of all, Jazakallah for giving me an opportunity to be a part of the show. And firstly, as has been mentioned, in the clip as well as in the show, one of the realities of life is that as you grow older, you do become more and more set in your ways, and you fully develop your habits that are then hard to change. So in the context of marriage, for women as well, they would find it harder to adapt and to compromise to the other person's lifestyle. So that's certainly one of the challenges that you would face as you grow older. And a couple of other things that came to my mind as I was watching the show. So secondly, as you'll agree, there are a widespread number of vices that exist in society today, as has been mentioned. And I think that by getting married in a timely manner at an earlier age, one is able to safeguard themselves sufficiently from these immoralities that exist in society. And this can include, premarital relationships or other unhealthy behaviors. And that's how you can safeguard your spiritual health. The other thing that came to my mind from mothering point of view, parenting requires a lot of energy. And I think that when a girl is younger, when a mother is younger, they have the stamina and strength and energy to keep up with their child, to raise their children, provide a strong foundation of tarbiyat. And lastly, I was just, as I was listening, it came to my mind a tradition of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. When one marries, he fulfills half of his faith. And so these words, are very, very profound. And they demonstrate very clearly that in order for us to reach higher spiritual heights and to elevate our faith and to develop our faith further, this is a journey that one must undertake in life and at the right time, too.
Very interesting. Jazakallah, very thoughtful insight. Dr. Sabah, from the medical point of view and especially from the very noble responsibility of the motherhood, what do you think? What's the best age of producing children?
The best age scientifically, research has shown, is between 18 to 22, and up to 25 is also is okay. Not to say that you cannot conceive and you can't have children later in life, but the female reproductive system ages to the point of failure at a relatively young age. And from a health perspective in general, we've heard the term biological clock. I'm sure all of you might have heard that. It's a commonly used term, and it's meant to make us aware that there is a right time for everything. Right. So as time passes, hormonally, physiologically, such changes take place in the bodies of men and women that lead not only to difficulty with conception, but then also increased risks of birth abnormalities, etc.
And that's very interesting, and especially the research which I also found is after the 35 years of age, there is a high chance, high probability of producing the abnormal children. Is it right or wrong? I mean,
no, it is very, very true. Actually, with age, the level of fertility decreases in a very rapid fashion, and the cut point that they usually do use in science and medicine is 35. Not to say that you can't have children after that, but the risk of birth defects, abnormalities, miscarriages, ectopic pregnancies, those types of things happen more and more. And also keep in mind, in general, a person's health, whether it be a woman or a man, deteriorates with age, right? And there's a rise of chronic health problems. And those impact a woman's health in a very negative way.
Very interesting. So, that's what I also use in the Jalasa term of the Jamaat, that the research which coincides with the Islamic teachings and Islamic traditions, we accept that research by all means, because the true and ultimate teaching is Islam. So by the grace of Allah, look at the human beings and humankind. They are finding these things, as we have heard in the TVO clip, and as well as in this one, the medical research, that how the human beings are finding it right now, which Islam have told us, the way of life have told to us ages ago. Dr. Sabah, there is another perspective, especially for the girls, because they have to adjust into a new lifestyle, new family, new home. And what do you think? Would it be harder or would it be easier when they married late in their life?
I think certainly at a younger age, anyone, as has been said, both boys and girls can adapt better because they're more flexible, they're more able to compromise, they're more able to adapt to the other person. And also, as was mentioned, you're growing, at that age. So why not grow together? There's no harm in learning from each other's mistakes and also taking on other people's strengths and getting rid of your weaknesses together.
Right, and especially from the girls' side, because I've been talking in one of the programs that it's very hard if the men put themselves in their shoes, going into a different lifestyle, different home, different people all together, it's very challenging, and it's very depressing sometimes also. So
Absolutely.
so that psychological thing, the women which they do, it's huge, and we should be very thankful to them that how they cope with this thing. Allah Ta'ala has built in these things into them, but that would be better and easier, much easier, if it's happened timely. So Jazakallah, Dr. Sabah, I'll keep you on the phone, and we'll see if there's some questions comes with, and then I'll ask the questions to you. Jazakallah for your input.
Jazakumullah ta'ala ahsanal jazaa.
So, I think a very interesting point that Dr. Khan brought up is, as obviously the four of you that are married, and you were talking about, from a woman's perspective as you're bonding, but she added a great point that none of you really touched on, is the stamina of a woman. And I guess you can't really know that until you get a female's perspective, that stamina at that early age and how critical of a role it plays.
I'm sure my wife was saying that though.
Right.
Right now.
But us as men, we just don't think about that as much, right?
Yeah.
It's difficult for us. Stamina is one of those things that even when you're watching sports and you see these athletes and you want your athlete or your team to win, but we can't really feel their stamina, right? It's very difficult to.
And Dr. Sahiba mentioned about the experiments have shown when there's a prime time when a woman can have children, and I can tell you from my experiments, my life experiment, I would say, is the first child that we had, it was a very easy birth for my wife, and as for the subsequent child, it got harder and harder. So it relates to the experiment I've to the research.
Right. So with that, I think that we're going to go into
the questions, and there is one of the tweet also which somebody was asking that health, right?
Right.
The question.
Right. So with that said, again, first of all, we want to thank all of our followers on Twitter that have sent us some of the questions. Like the last show, I actually have a smartphone device in my hand, so I'll be taking some of the questions the device that I've been given with the Aperture questions coming in. It has been buzzing with a variety of questions from various different angles of life. So I'm going to start with a few, and it is an open discussion. So at any point, if either of you feel that you can contribute to it, please do. One of the questions that comes in is from @Harris, LAKER123, and the question is: some people, when they get married, stop being as involved in jamaat activities. And maybe it's a part of raising a family. How can one balance their life where they can, give us the same amount of time, or maybe a similar amount of time to the jamaat while balancing having a family?
It's actually it's a good question. We have guidance from the Holy Prophet ﷺ in not just marriage. Sometimes job comes in the way, or promotion comes in the way, or some of those things come in the way, where we forget about certain things, certain responsibilities. The guidance of the Holy Prophet ﷺ is that khairul umure awsatuha, The best of things are in the middle, right? So Islam promotes taking the middle path in everything. Don't go into any extremes. So when it comes to marriage and family responsibilities, don't spend so much time with them that you forget about everything else. Here in the West, sometimes when we get married, we forget about our parents, which is ridiculous. Or when we have a child. So don't go into extremes in any sense. Right? Everything should be taken in a certain balance, in a certain way, to a certain extent.
Right.
And you're a young father also, right?
Right. Very recently, second time around. So congratulations on that too. But Sadr Sahib, I want to come to you. Obviously, being Sadr Jamaat, there's added responsibility. You do hold a both not only a challenging role, but a very critical role in raising a family. Maybe you can share some tips and advice to some married couples at home and soon to be married.
Yeah, I think one of the important thing is communication with your family, and keeping that communication and making plans together. So you plan for the Jamaat events, you plan for the family time. That's very critical. So if, as Murabbi Sahib has said, take the middle path. You don't want to ignore the family and just do the Jamaat work, but if you plan, you can have a balance in both.
Very nice.
And communication is,
right. And Sufyan Bhai, I know that you've been very involved with Atfal al-Ahmadiyya, and various different activities. First of all, did it impact your Jamaat work once you were married? And do you feel that you're able to balance it out? I know it's easier to say that we have to find the middle path.
I would lie if I said it didn't. Of course it did, and that's where the learning again, the curve comes in place. Communication is number one. Right, and I'm at the same time I have Jamaat work, but she's doing Jamaat work too. So what we found very early was that we should work together. We should go to the masjid, and you do your duties and I'll do my duties. Or if it can be done at home, we can do that as well. Obviously, this is before the child. So we worked together. We found time, so we're still together, and we're still getting Jamaat work completed. So there's that opportunity is always given to you.
Okay.
And there was, actually.
And I want to actually get your insight too. I'm not going to let you off the hook with this one. Of course, you hold two double roles.
No, I two double roles. I already mentioned a lot about the before marriage, and I have to go back home also, so I cannot talk more.
Right.
My in-laws, some of them are there also watching the show, so I have to be careful. So I can move to the next.
Because I know you spend a number of hours, and sometimes you go home really late. But do you feel that you're able to balance it?
Right. I mean, that's once again, the point is you have to spend the time with the family also, with the kids. You don't have to ignore because they need that presence as well. So, and that sometimes becomes very challenging, especially when you have more and more roles and more responsibilities. The whole point is the realization. And that's one of the bounty of Allah, and that's why there is also mentioned in the Holy Quran, look for the piety when you are getting married. And that creates a very vicious circle, very interesting circle, vicious in a positive sense. Because what is another thing which we are seeing that in our schools and colleges when the boys and girls, they're being brought up together, right? But they're not interested, like, that if their proposal comes to get married, they want to get married somewhere unknown world, not the ones who brought up in front of them.
Right.
The point is because we know too much about each other. So this is I'm trying to link to the point that where the piety, that has to be competitive in a competitive sense right from the get-go, right from the beginning, right from the childhood. Because then you will want to opt for that. And that helps in establishing that kind of relationship later in the marriage where the other partner, other better half, realizes that she has to be understandable also about the Jamaat responsibilities and then vice versa.
Right.
So that also depends on you brought up.
Right, so I think it comes back to that same communication that Sadr Sahib touched on
and
earlier.
Also the basics.
Right.
There's a health issue question also, and then I think we have addressed that to some extent.
Right. I think and again, I'm going through some of these questions in no specific order, but I think the next question, I would like to actually direct this one to you if you don't mind.
Once again. Okay.
The question, and I think that it may be a little bit more relevant to your current role, is what are some of the initiatives that Jamaat is taking to prevent the increased divorce rate at times? What are different activities? And maybe you can shed some light on the question. Comes in from @Hanya M_.
You know, divorce is one of the basic fundamental which we are promoting is a timely marriage.
Right.
And that kills many birds with one stone. We have talked about all of those advantages, that how we can address so many issues and the divorce rates and to understand each other and to getting outside of the jamaat, so many things in civil injustice. That's one of the perfect solution, timely marriage. The second is we are having premarital counseling, the counseling before the marriage, in which we invite the bridegroom and their families also, the parents actually, and they sat with a counselor and they go through the discussions with the whole family and the bride and bridegroom, and then the one portion is only for the bride and bridegroom. And by the sheer grace of Allah, because this is what we have started under the direction of Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis, we have seen that when we have started from the last year or so, we have not received any divorce or complaint in Muriama or in Qaza. I think
Quite
I
an
heard about
achievement, that
one.
is.
So from the last 1 year, so by the sheer grace of Allah, and this is how it is,
Right.
As I mentioned, that Huzur Anwar direction. And then I also want to extend this question to Lajna Amalla. Dr. Sabah, do you want to shed some light in this regard?
In terms of what steps Lajna is
Right,
taking?
right. For the successful marriage.
Right. So in the past few years, at least for the past 3 or 4 years, on a national level as well as regional and local levels, we've been organizing various workshops and forums for a group of girls who are engaged or about to get married or right now are unmarried, and even girls who are newly married in different sessions. And so we've been sort of hosting those and organizing them across the country with very positive feedback, with very good attendance, mashallah. And we found that a lot of girls have participated and found it very useful in the sense that they've been able to have those discussions and share their anxieties or whatever other challenges they're facing. So I think overall it's been a good effort and hopefully beneficial for the participants as well. And we continue to do those.
Right, very good. And I think that, just to kind of echo that, programs of this nature are a testament to continuing those conversations and really being able to, bring forth dialogue and discussion where some of the youth watching from home are able to send in their questions and should they have any lingering thoughts in their mind, we're able to address them. The next question, I think, is a very, very interesting one because it talks about the influence that society has on marriage, not just the Western society, but the question comes in from Bilawal A, and it says, do you think that Bollywood or even Hollywood or other movies have an impact on how people perceive to find their partner in marriage? And do you think that it plays a factor into false hope?
I think so. We should ask Sufyan, the youngest one.
Go home, turn your TV on, and you'll see all these shows. They're 30, 35, 40 and dating, or there's certain shows that are based on just divorce, a single lady, and we know those. So obviously they do play a part. At first they're just a show and for entertainment, and then at some point somewhere it becomes almost it gets into your brain, an ingredient of your brain, an ingredient on which you will make a decision for your new future mate. So I've seen that. It's a slow process, but I can see it's arrived where today we do base our decisions, our partner decisions on these factors.
I think it also influences extravagance a lot. Spending too much, making too much of a big deal out of the whole marriage concept or the marriage ceremony. Islam is all about holding a simple ceremony and not putting too much burden on the society or on the families to try and make have an extravagant wedding with extravagant types of food and celebrations. Islam is more about doing everything in a simple way. Right?
And that is another reason of delaying the marriage sometime, because the parents are expecting their children or especially the boy to be financially stable so he can spend quite a few thousands of dollars on his marriage. And that's another reason of delaying the marriages.
Yeah. Right.
We're so impractical in our thinking about everything. That's a dilemma, and that's why we are raising this awareness a lot from the last few years, as Lajna Mala has mentioned as well, and from Jamaat perspective as well.
And I've seen a lot of cases where parents have a greater role in that. Is they're looking for a perfect couple. They're looking for a perfect daughter-in-law or perfect son-in-law.
Because of the media.
Yes.
That plays the role, right?
Yes,
it does.
It has to,
whatever.
The ideal,
Yeah.
and
Fantasy.
you cannot find that, and they keep on looking for that perfect match, which they do not, and then that age thing is gone,
Right,
and then it becomes harder and harder.
Right.
To add that perfect match, it doesn't get any easier. If you delay it, it gets very harder. At one point, you had the support system, and today, if you look at the married couples, they're not living at home; they're away from parents, and there's that financial stress there. One would say, I would settle, I'll get my job, I'll settle in those terms, but that just makes it harder. It's against logic, but it makes it very much harder, because now you don't have your support of your family. So you want to marry early and settle faster together, whereas before you could have gotten away with marrying later because you had your support of your parents, right? So
if you put it the other way around, I think so that argument should be the other way around. Before, we used to have the joint family systems and the parent support.
Exactly.
And the people were getting timely married without going through such a stringent selection process.
Right.
And those marriages have much higher success rate as compared to so-called we became wiser in an education point of view, or we became more educated, but are we becoming wiser with the time? That's the question to us. And that's what one of the tweet in the last show also, that many parents are living in their hypothetical selection criteria. So parents have their own hypothetical selection criteria, which is Western mentality, and that's what I wanted to cover also.
Right.
And children have Western culture hypothetical criteria, and religion is not the part of any of those two things. Religion is something in between. And that's the problem. That's why the whole marriage process is becoming so cumbersome, and selecting the partner is becoming so cumbersome, that sometimes you're losing such a good partner, such a good chance to get married to a right partner, but because of the stringent criteria, it's not happening.
I don't think
in certain ways fantastic, right?
Fantastic, yeah.
Which is unreal, right?
Right.
Sometimes we feel, discussion should not start when we're 21 or 20 or 18. It should start much earlier. And the thinking process should start much earlier, 16, 15, and 14, 13.
13 years of age, that's in the
the
Majlis Shura we have
recommendation.
mentioned.
It's
13 years of age, the boy and the girl should start praying for their partner. Khalifatul Masih Rabi Rahimahullah Ta'ala also, Chaudhry Hadili Sahab used to be there with him. And he mentioned he used to send the gift to the girl who used to come to her his classes by the age of 14 or 15, that I don't know whether I will be here or somewhere else because of Jamaat's work. So I'm just sending you a gift for her marriage. So he is sending the message to that family that you need to start getting prepared for that.
Right. And I think the next tweet is really in line with what we're discussing. The question is that, especially by our parents and just society as a whole, where we are forced to choose a career path at the age of 17, 18, to really start having, even in school, counselors are talking to you at that time. What do you want to be? There's that parental pressure to really pursue your post-secondary education as well. How are we to also be thinking about a life partner at the same age, when you're having to make those decisions? Maybe you can speak to a little bit to your experience, how you're, mentally you want to be so focused on your studies and as you're choosing your career path, while you're also being asked to start pursuing a partner.
It's not as difficult as the question is. It's very simple. It's just another part of life. As I was saying, it's a natural step. Career is a natural step. Marriage is a natural step. In terms of thinking process, there's so much benefit to think about it, because now you're putting, when that time comes, you've already thought about what sort of partner you're seeking. And that phase when you're asking the questions to your potential mate, that's critical. Because if you ask the wrong questions, you're going to fail. You need to ask the right questions, and what you have to be very honest with what you need, what you're wanting, what your preference is, and she has to be honest. And so going back to your core question that's the opportunity to start thinking about it. And it can happen, both can happen. It's just two phases of life that are going together.
But actually, once again, the question is reversed. Actually, there is all studies and all, to whoever you have talked about, there is a feedback that they become more focused in their life. Instead of like they are going towards instead of like going through that whole process of they're confused to which subjects I do, like they become focused and now they have to finish the degree and get out and start working.
Yeah.
Because they know that they're engaged and they want to get married. So this whole process makes you more focused towards your life and your responsibilities instead of like lingering around.
Right, and I think I want to also get Dr. Sab's opinion on this as well, as we're talking about, you know, the pressure of completing your education, and you have that pressure while also some may call it a distraction of getting married. So Dr. Sab, if I can ask you to maybe speak a little bit to your experience.
I think certainly you're right in the sense that there does exist this pressure, and with education becoming increasingly demanding and intense, especially at the undergraduate level in Canada, you know, girls and boys actually do spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of hard work goes into gaining that education. And some girls especially might feel that they've invested so much time and so much effort in gaining this education that if they were to leave it at this point or abandon it and go another path in their life, that they would have wasted that. And I think like that's a bigger topic that, you know, can be addressed at another time. But in general, just to say that people's priorities should be in the right place, and our spiritual health, our spiritual development is more important than our worldly pursuits. And I think that if we were to put our priorities in the right place, we would ultimately be very successful in both spheres, both spiritually as well as in the worldly sphere.
Right. Jazakallah. It's a very, very fundamental point, because once the priorities are right, then you can find the ways around it. Once your direction is right, you will automatically find the ways. Where there is a need, there automatically the solutions comes.
And you're also praying more.
You're
right?
praying more, right?
And you have that attitude and everything, and you know.
Right.
Things work out.
Things work out, right?
Right. So actually,
you know, God Almighty is never going to waste anybody's skills, right? So if Allah has given us a skill and a particular, knowledge in a field, etc., then He's not going to allow us to waste it either. So we should have that trust in Him and should put our priorities in the right place.
Yeah, very interesting.
Jazakallah for your wonderful response. Another one of the questions that has come in is, what is the difference between engagement and dating with positive intentions? They've put in brackets only conversation, nothing else. I think that you answered it beautifully.
Dating and?
So what is the difference between engagement and dating with positive intentions? And I know you answered it really well last time, but I'm going to ask.
Yeah, I think engagement in the Islamic sense is more of a family thing, right? It's not the people who are about to get married. They are not directly involved or are separately involved in the process. Engagement is more where the parents are involved. The family is doing the homework on behalf of the boy and the girl, right? And dating is more where the boy or the girl is going out there themselves and trying to determine whether to find the right partner for themselves. Right. But engagement is where the parents are doing the homework. So, aren't they better aren't they more qualified to actually do the homework and find out the background of a person? And in fact, it's actually easier for the boy and the girl because they have the comfort of knowing that somebody more experienced, somebody who has lived longer, much longer than themselves, is actually doing the background check. Right?
And that becomes very pressurized environment on the boy and the girl, because now they have to market themselves.
Exactly.
And that I have seen at the workplace also. I have seen even the ladies especially who have divorced, who are living as single parent or by themselves. It's an extremely pressure environment for them, because now they have to market themselves to the others so that others can get attracted towards them.
And judging a person, a single person, is not easy. But when you have the family involved, and you know the family background of the other person, it makes it easier to judge that person, what kind of a person that is.
Right. Swiftly moving on to the next questions, because I'm getting so many coming in. We're averaging about 8 to 10 questions a minute.
Okay.
So I want to give as many people an opportunity. Another one that came in, it is, obviously we're often told to find a partner who has piety and the right lifestyle and of course is a religious person. There's a question, and actually quite a few people have asked this question: how does one judge the piety of a potential life partner? Isn't piety something between Allah and the person?
Exactly, it is definitely. So you do the family background check. You see how that person is involved in, on the surface, right? On the surface. For example, we have prayers in congregation. That is something that can be judged on the surface. Is that person attached to the mosque or not? Is that person attached to the jamaat or not? In the jamaat, we have such an excellent system of doing service to faith. How much time is that person spending serving his faith? How is that person at home with his or her parents? And you can ask these questions, which
right.
Yeah, and to me also, like like how we have selected our partners. We should check that also. Like to me, how what I have done also. The brothers of my wife, all of them are very active in Jamaat.
Right.
Her parents also, her upbringing, how her hijab was, how she was going to a college in Pakistan, which is very famous, like it's a very high-end college, college, and how is she over there? So all those things, which the lifestyle, how the lifestyle of the family is, how much they're involved, how much they know about the Jamaat, and how much all those things. It's very obvious. You can find
none of that can happen with dating.
None of that can happen with dating. Right?
I'll add something. Level of spirituality. For me, that was one of the criterias. When we were talking about asking questions, that phase, it's a happy phase. You can ask anything you want to certain limits. It was level of spirituality, because at that point, we all have phases up and down in our spirituality, and that was where I wasn't the highest. And when I went to seek her, I was hoping and praying that she is much higher than me. Alhamdulillah, she was. Right. And I asked her the question, simple one: how many times do you pray? And her answer was remarkable: I pray tahajjud. And then that's all I need to do. So then I came back 1 month later, and obviously we go again down. We're humans. But 2-3 months after, tahajjud.
Back to that point in the last episode when I mentioned about that, we are corrupting, like if we'll go into that environment which we have in the society, we are going to corrupt the mothers of the future. And look at the opposite side of it. How noble and how calm and how peaceful is that system. If we keep taking care of the girls of this age, so that our mothers, our wives, our daughters of the future will be secured. Yeah. So you want to, Dr. Sabah, you want to add in this context something?
My answer is just to the question that was posed about how do you know whether a potential partner is truly righteous. I think the simple answer is prayer, and Allah Ta'ala will tell you whether this person is good for you or not. Right. And the condition, of course, is that you yourself have to have developed a degree of piety and closeness with Allah Ta'ala. And if you have a relationship with God, He will certainly help you when the time comes to help you choose. Because you are right, sometimes it is deep within a person's heart. You really cannot judge. But Allah Ta'ala knows everything. So if you turn to Him, He will certainly guide you.
Exactly.
And when you make a decision, I think she's referring to an istikhara prayer. There's a special prayer.
Yes, somebody asked a question.
There's a special prayer of the Holy Prophet ﷺ that whenever you're about to decide something, you do istikhara. Some do it for 1 day, some do it for 7 days. And you can go research that, and it's a special prayer. It's a very beautiful prayer, which you can memorize. And the essence of that prayer is that, oh Allah, if I'm about to make this decision, if this decision is right for me, turn my heart towards it. And if this decision is bad for me, turn my heart away from it. So you're praying to Allah that if something that I'm about to decide is good for me, make me come closer to it, enable me to get it. And if my heart, if it's not good for me, then turn my heart away, avert me from it, right? So this is the essence of that prayer in Arabic, and you offer that, and then you go to bed. So and Allah will turn your heart. He might even show you a dream where He but that is Allah's decision, right? That is His will. But what definitely happens is that if it's good for you, He will turn your heart towards it.
Jazakallah for that great explanation. With that said, guys, we're going to start swiftly moving towards the conclusion of the show and wrapping things up. In wrapping things up, Ashad Mustafa, I want to ask you, is there anything that you would like to add? because I know there's one segment that we can never finish any episode without, which has become everybody's favorite segment for our two new members here. There's a segment of the show, it's called Shahid Mansoor Sab's favorite tweets, where he reads out a collection of tweets randomly selected. So we will move into that, and then right after
specifically selected.
One thing which we are promoting, and what's the right time of getting married and what time frame we are promoting, we'll leave it for the next episode because that's where we are going to wrap up the things. So we'll end up the episode with that. But I'll move on. Am I allowed to move on to the...
Yes, please.
Yes, favorite tweets, yeah.
Yes.
I'm trying to stop it. It's a very interesting one. Actually, I revealed that secret when we were waiting for the show to the panel members over here, but I'm going to read that tweet. Very interesting. It's in Urdu. I wish I could have read it in Urdu, but I'll try to do the translation. A wise person, whenever he tries to make a very important decision for himself, he thinks using his mind and brain and heart. He look at the proceedings or how the things are going around him. He looks into the logic also. He looks into the positives and negatives of the situation. He asks, oh, my tweet got lost. Sorry for that.
No problem.
So he asks for the opinion to his parents and brothers and sisters and his friends also. But what you do in the end, whatever his wife says. So
right. So, I think just to do justice to that, maybe you should read out in Urdu as well.
अक्लमंद आदमी जब कोई ख़ास और अहम फैसला करता है तो बहुत सोचता है, दिलो दिमाग की सुनता है, हालात को परखता है, दलील को ज़र गौर लाता है, मुस्बत और मनफी पहलू का जायज़ा लेता है, अपने वालिदैन और बहन भाइयों से राय लेता है और आखिर में करता वही है जो उसकी बीवी कहती है. So this is a tweet. Safwan, you are fortunate. So you don't know what it takes, you know. So yeah, I'm opposing the concept of the show today. It's by Shazia. I have some other tweets also. I have to move the account to Aperture because I did the favorites over there. Favorites. Okay. 7, and it's by Islamic Light. 7 whom Allah will shade with his shade on the day when there will be no shade except his. The just ruler, a young man who grows up worshipping his Lord, a man whose heart is attached to the mosque, 2 men who love one another for the sake of Allah and meet and part on that basis, a man who is called by a woman of rank and beauty and says, I fear Allah, a man who gives in charity and conceals it to such an extent that his left hand does not know what his right hand gives, and a man who remembers Allah when he is alone and his eyes fill up. Very interesting tweet.
With tears.
Jazakallah. With tears, yes. By the Islamic Light, Jazakallah for that. There are 200 Salat centers in USA, zip codes of those Salat centers, which are almost 200 now. They had the target up to December by the grace of Allah Tarbiyat Department. And spiritual fitness, they have achieved that and they have shared the zip codes of those Salat centers. It's a huge achievement by the grace of Allah. Then Mubarak Nazir Sahib have tweeted a message from Ataul Wais Sahib on behalf of Humanity First. I'm home from the Philippines. We saw so many doors opened by God that I prayed to Him to slow down as I could not keep up. Very interesting. And so these are the, and another one, Valentine's Day is a silly corporate holiday by Anika Jamal. Couples should show love, be kind, and just in general amazing towards each other every day. And that is especially in the context of the show which we are having. So these are, and I couldn't have said it better about the marriage. It's once again another one by the Islamic Light. A lot of men act like they are doing a woman a favor by asking for her hand in marriage. But let's think about this. She changes her name, changes her home, leaves her family, moves in with you, builds a home with you, gets pregnant for you, bears children for you, and that gets toll on her body also. Even the kids she delivers bear your name. Till the day she dies, everything she does benefits you. So who is really doing you a favor? Dear men, appreciate your wife today, because it's not easy to be a woman. So Jazakallah.
And just for some of our viewers watching that must be wondering, some of these tweets are really long. I know some of them were pictures, as I could see over that. Not all of them were tweets. There were pictures that were tweeted. But with that said, Jazakallah for that segment of the show. With that said, I have been consistently warned that the show has gone well over our time limit. And with that said, as was mentioned earlier, this specific segment is a 3-part series. The first part, which started 2 weeks ago, which was on relationship and marriage. Today was part 2 of that segment. One of the good news that I want to give to some of our viewers, because we have been receiving a lot of comments and feedback to potentially look at and explore the idea of doing this show on a weekly basis. We are strongly looking at the option of having the 3rd part of this series next week, instead of there being a lapse of a Friday in between. So join us next Friday at the same time of 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please, make the distinction among your local time. From wherever in the world you are. We've been receiving comments all the way from UK, US, nationally here in Canada and other parts of Asia as well. So we want to thank you for spending this time with us. Continue to send us your feedback.
Topic of the next show is
and the topic of the next show will be the life once you're married and
no, it's not. You want to know the person with whom you're getting married, so we're going to explore that avenue.
Right. So the 3rd component and the 3rd part, it will be how to get to know the person, the process of finding the right suitable match for you, and both within the guidelines and steps that parents should be looking to take. So we would also encourage to invite your parents to watch the show as well. Jazakallah for spending this time with us. Assalamu alaikum.